Everyone. This is Sherry Baggett. I'm the controller for the University Corporation. We are delighted to see so many of you here with us on this first virtual online business operations forum. We're used to presenting this to you from the living room, of course, on campus. And in these unusual times, we're presenting to you from the living rooms of our homes. We're glad to see so many of you on this Zoom session with us today. The number of participants is really encouraging, and who knows, maybe this is the way we need to do future business ops forums to get a good amount of participation, but very happy that you all are here joining us. We hope you all are staying well and healthy. The housekeeping reminders, thank you so much to Heather, that the videos and microphones are turned off should help with the connectivity, and hopefully we won't have any glitches during this presentation. It is a pretty full agenda that we have for you. We're going to cover updates and reminders on topics ranging from accounts payable to procurement, contracts, pro cards, post-award, and general year-end accounting deadlines. We do expect it may go about an hour and a half or so. We do encourage your questions in the chat box. Monica Rodriguez, our county manager, will be primarily responding to those. And as Heather mentioned, at the end of each session, we can share some of those for the general purpose to just add any information or clarification. Don't be shy. We do encourage those questions. We're here to help clarify anything. I want to begin with our first slide, and it's one that you have seen in the past. It's just a reminder of the support services that the auxiliary provides to the campus. So primarily, of course, you see our housing operations, which we provide for students, staff, and faculty, our dining services, commercial services, for example, the bookstore, the Child Development Center, our vending tracks. We also have the radio station, 90.3 FM KAZU radio, which is NPR for the Monterey Bay. In addition, we provide the accounting and business support services for the university's other two auxiliaries. Those are the Foundation of CSUMB, which is the philanthropic organization. There are no employees, but it houses the monies for the endowments and the scholarship funds. And the other auxiliary, the Otter Student Union, which, as you've all seen, I'm sure, has a new building going up on campus. And the next slide is our organizational chart. Some of you have asked to see this in the past, and we will be putting that up on our website soon. This, of course, shows that we report to the executive director, Kevin Saunders, who, of course, is also the vice president for administration and finance. He reports up to the president. The president is also the president of the corporation's board of directors. Serving on our board is not just the president, but all of the vice presidents, a student, a faculty, and a staff representative, along with a community member. The rest of the organizational chart shows direct reports to Kevin, and all of our direct reports, positions, and names are included there for you to peruse at your leisure. These are the two slides that I was tasked with today. I get to now at this time pass the virtual baton over to Heather, who of course is one of our 3 accounts payable technicians. Thank you all again for your participation today.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for getting this kicked off. Again, my name is Heather Wilkes. I am one of the 3 accounts payable technicians here at the University Corporation. We wanted to go ahead and kick today's meeting off by talking about the most important topic on everybody's mind right now as to how we are doing business under the current situation. One big thing we wanted to make sure that we are reminding folks of is that it's very important that COVID-19 related special expenses are being communicated to us. It's very important that we have a project code COVID-19 associated with this. This is as per the Chancellor's office. So we really need departmental support in making sure that we get all of the appropriate expenses identified. So if you have any questions on that, please feel free to reach out to talk to us. We do just want to remind folks that it's important that we are aware of any COVID-19 related special expenses. We have developed a web page that covers all of our current temporary processes during this time. I'll go ahead and take you to that now. Take a moment to open here. But it is our Business Under Shelter at Home webpage. It can be reached by going to our Forms section on our University Corporation page. You can see here, can be easily accessed there. We also have several links to it in various places. This website covers all of our temporary approval acceptance processes and includes information on how to submit documents to us, digital copies of documents, tools on document processing. We're in the midst of adding additional tutorials on how to use Adobe Acrobat, which is part of Adobe Creative Suite, and this can help you process your documents and get us your virtual documents that much faster. So please go ahead and take the time to visit this website and check it out when you have the opportunity. We'll go ahead and go on to the next slide here. Part of what that web page covers is the electronic signature options that are available to you. We want to remind folks that they can use DocuSign or Adobe Reader or Adobe Creative Suite. And oh, I just found out that the web page did not show up. Sorry about that. I will fix that at another time. Okay, we want to make sure that people know that that link does work in live time. If you are to click on that Business Under Shelter at Home link, it will take you to our page. My apologies that it did not show up. So it does cover our electronic signature options. So DocuSign, Adobe Reader, and Adobe Creative Suite. Please note that those electronic options, there is a tutorial on DocuSign that the stateside did, and we are working on publishing some tutorials for using the signature options in the Adobe Acrobat Suite. So most of the software we're talking about today can be found at the website listed below. That's the CAT free software website. So this is available to all of the staff and faculty, and there is a lot of really great software there that can help you during this time in order to electronically manage your documents. So I highly encourage everybody to visit that website and verify that you know, they can get whatever software that they need. So Adobe Reader is available there, as is the Adobe Creative Suite. The Adobe Creative Suite is fantastic. It contains Adobe Acrobat, which will allow you to do a lot of great things with your Adobe PDF files. You can virtually sign or initial documents. You can print documents as PDFs. One of the best things you can do with Adobe Acrobat is combine multiple PDFs into one document. So you can see that I've got an image of the Combine Files tool here. That Combine Files tool is fantastic. My favorite trick is to open, say I have 3 Adobe PDF files I want to combine into one PDF document. I will open all 3, press the Combine Files button. It will combine the 3 files. I can save that new combined file as one PDF document. So this is fantastic when you are attaching backup documentation to an invoice. This way you can get all 10 of those PDFs into one complete document before submitting it. This makes things a lot easier for everybody. So if all else fails and you cannot use any of the electronic signature options, we want people to know that we will take an email stating the identifying details of the item that is being approved. So please include the vendor or payee name, the invoice number, the invoice date, the total due, the chart string, the purchase order if applicable. This is all very important information. This helps us identify that you, as the authorized signer, are approving this specific document. And we want to make sure that this approval is being sent from the authorized signer's email. So please be sure to verify that it is being sent from that authorized signer's email. We do want everybody to submit all of their documents to the UCorp accounts payable email address. That's the best way to get your documents to us during this time. We understand that a lot of folks are still very comfortable working with paper documents, but we are having trouble getting those into our hands quickly. So the best bet is to get as much to us virtually that you can. We also want to touch on some of the changes that have been made to Pro cards during this time. As most of you are aware, most Pro cards have been reduced to a $1 limit. Please note that there are two separate Pro card lists, one on the state side, one on the corporation side. And understand that there are differences between those lists. They're administered by different people. So if you have been cut on one side, you may or may not be cut on the other side. So you just need to speak with your Pro card administrator. We are also asking that during this time, if you do need to use a Pro card for a purchase, that you go ahead and speak with your supervisor or department head. See if there are any Pro cards within your department that you can use. That would be the best scenario. If all else fails and no other departmental Pro cards are available and a purchase still needs to be made, there are the normal steps to request a temporary limit increase for your Pro card for that specific purchase. So just follow those necessary normal steps in order to get that increase. There is also a scenario where you may have recurring expenses on your procurement card. If so, you need to go ahead and submit that information to your approving official. That information will then get forwarded to your vice president of your college. If everybody has approved the increase in order to allow for that recurring balance, that can then be forwarded to Cynthia Lynch, the Pro card administrator on the University Corporation side. Again, the vice president of your college needs to approve the reinstatement of your UCorp Pro card to cover the recurring expenses. So we need to make sure that you've got your VP approval prior to submitting that to the Pro card administrator, Cindy Lynch. Also, as a reminder, during this time, there are special scenarios. And although normally Pro card purchases cannot be shipped to an off-campus address, if there is a need for this, you need to obtain prior approval from your approving official. So we need you to reach out to your approving official, get that appropriate pre-approval, and get that information to us at the University Corporation so that we are aware of this workaround. We also want to remind folks that if they are taking any equipment home to be used at home that is University Corporation equipment, you need to submit an asset management agreement form. We do have this form listed on our corporation forms webpage under the procurement heading. And you want to go ahead and complete this form listing all of the equipment that you did need to remove from campus and get that to your department head. Your department head will be responsible for tracking that equipment and verifying that it is returned at the end of all of this. We also know that everybody is aware of the travel cancellations which occurred. And at this point, the travel cancellation is been extended through July 31st. So of course, as we find out, you will find out, and we'll keep you all posted as to what date that ends up turning into. Please note that if you do have travel that is thought of as essential, it's very important that you report that essential travel to your department ahead, and then submit that to the respective dean and VP or provost for determination and approval prior to sending the RAT to UCorp. So this is the important point, is that you need to have your VP or provost deem the travel as essential prior to sending the RAT to the University Corporation Accounts Payable Department. We cannot accept a RAT without that signature on it, as only essential travel is being allowed, and the University Corporation does not make that determination. Only the VP or provost may. Also, as far as travel cancellations, at this point, everybody should have turned in their travel expense claims, covering any expenses that were incurred prior to all of this shutdown. And for those folks who haven't, please be sure to turn in those travel expense claims. We need to make sure that any prepaid expenses have been properly accounted for. So we know that many travel agencies, airlines, hotels are working with travelers to make sure that these transactions do get credited. So a lot of folks are being able to get full credit. However, if you can only get a voucher or travel credit for later use, it's important that that gets used at the earliest opportunity. So the important thing is that we need to know the disposition of those prepaid funds. We need to know what got credited, how it got credited, and what attempts were made to get those credits. All of that should be documented on your travel expense claim and turned into us. And of course, if you have any unused funds from a travel advance, it should be submitted to the cashier's office. And then a text should be submitted summarizing all of that information. So the cashier's office is currently open, last we heard, Tuesdays and Thursdays, 1:30 to 4:30 p.m., but that is again subject to change. So we'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that may have popped up. All right.
Okay, so it seems like there's no questions, so we'll go ahead and proceed to the next section, which would be Therese Chambers with accounts payable.
Therese, I believe you're muted.
Yeah, there we go. Okay, everybody, so technical error there. Good morning, my name is Therese Chambers, and I am one of the Corporation Accounts Payable Technicians. Would be nice if I had turned on my volume. I will be presenting the accounts payable portion of our presentation today. I can just get that to click, thank you. This is a screenshot of the corporation webpage. For your reference, the link is at the bottom of the slide. If you select the drop-down arrow next to the word forms, you will see two choices. The first is the one that Heather has been speaking about, the University Corporation Business under Shelter at Home page. The other is the corporation forms. This is where the forms and handbooks we in accounts payable work with, as well as the ones used by the other corporation departments. What are you popping through? Okay. It's a good idea to visit our webpage at least 2 or 3 times a year, as we often update our forms, and the website will have the most current versions. An example is the travel expense claim, which is updated whenever the IRS mileage rate is changed. The corporation hospitality policy was updated in spring of 2019. This policy applies to the events and meetings that are on or off campus. The key points to remember about this policy are the key points to remember about this policy are there is a limit allowed per person per meal. An example would be $30 per person for breakfast. This total is inclusive of more than just the food and beverages. It includes the sales tax, table linens, equipment rental, bartending service, etc. One-up authorization should be obtained before the event if the limit per person exceeds the amount listed in the table. An invoice can total more signatures than just the authorized signer for a fund. If an invoice totals more than $1,000, then a one-up signature is required. This would be the supervisor of the authorized signer. If an invoice totals more than $3,000, then it requires a signature of the vice president of your college. If alcohol is to be served, and an alcohol approval form needs to be completed and submitted to CSUMB Risk Management. There is also another situation that would require you to get a one-up signature. This would be when you are serving both light refreshments and a meal. An example would be coffee and cookies are served after a catered lunch. And as a reminder, the required support documents for a hospitality-related invoice or expense are a sign-in sheet for groups of 20 or more, or 20 or less, I apologize. That's 20 or less requires a sign-in sheet, a flyer, email, invite, agenda, or something official that reflects the date, time, and location, and also purpose of the meeting. Travel to specific states has been restricted or banned. If travel to one of the states listed on this slide is required, there is a list of approved exceptions for the Chancellor's office. Please contact University Corporation Accounts Payable for a copy of the list of approved exceptions. The approval of a RAT with travel to a banned state requires additional processing time. To expedite the approval process of the RAT with travel to a restricted state, please include the exception that applies to the purpose of travel at the time of submission. If you would like more detailed information regarding AB 1887, please use the link on this slide. Oh, hey, you. The honorarium agreement is available on our webpage under, thanks Heather. The honorarium agreement is available on our webpage under procurement. The first page of the honorarium agreement has an explanation of its purpose and a guide to assist you in determining whether the honorarium agreement is the correct document to use. Please submit the completed honorarium agreement and completed vendor data record along with a flyer, email announcement, or something that reflects the date, time, location, and location of the event. This should be submitted prior to the date of the event. Once the honorarium has been approved, a copy will be sent to the department contact. A payment to the honorarium recipient is initiated by the submission of a check request from the department. Until we receive the check request with a copy of the approved honorarium, a payment will not be processed. There are two scenarios with regards to the payment to the honorarium recipient. Scenario one is where we are just paying them a flat amount, for example, $1,500. The full amount is taxable and reportable income, and the recipient or the honorarium is required or responsible for their own travel expenses. Scenario two, the travel is being reimbursed to the honorarium. The reimbursement is based on the actual expenses. Itemized receipts need to be submitted along with the check request and the copy of the approved honorarium. This is considered non-taxable because the reimbursement is based on the actual expenses. The amount being paid to the honorarium for the service they provide, for example, the $1,500, will be considered taxable and reportable. If the itemized receipts are not submitted, then the reimbursement for the travel expenses will be considered taxable and reportable income. An invoice will be posted into CFS for payment when it has the required support documentation, a chart string, the approvals from both the department and within the corporation. Payment will be issued based on net 30 terms. This means that the check will be issued 30 days after the date on the invoice. To expedite the setting up of a vendor in CFS, the VDR needs to be fully completed. Please ask the person completing the VDR or vendor data record to complete all sections on both pages. If the information isn't complete, or it can delay the setup and subsequently the payment to the vendor. If the sales tax on a purchase of goods is inaccurate or there is no sales tax charged, we are responsible for the payment. Use tax will be calculated based on the delivery address and charged to the same chart string as the original purchase. This is done whether it's an invoice related to a purchase on a Pro card or an invoice sent for direct payment. When you are making a purchase for resale, we do need to report and send the payment for the sales tax. So it needs to be accounted at the time of the sale. Please contact accounts payable for assistance prior to purchasing the items for resale. And thank you for bearing with me and all my fun mistakes.
Okay, thank you, Therese. If there are any questions, can you please type them in the chat at this moment? I'll give you a few minutes, or a few seconds actually, before we proceed to the next section. Okay, it seems that there's no questions either. We'll go ahead and proceed with Nancy Ayala, who'll be talking about contracts for services. Thank you.
Nancy, you appear to be muted. Oh, there we go. I'll go ahead and set you back up.
Oh, okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Oh, yeah, sorry about that. Okay. Okay, so hi, I'm Nancy Ayala. I process the corporation's contracts. I purposely made my slides a little wordy in case anyone wants to download them and use them as a reference later. My portion will focus on frequently asked questions that I receive regarding contracts. So to jump in here, one of the most frequently asked questions is, when is a contract needed? A contract is needed anytime a contractor will be paid for services performed. When should a contract be started? Start the contract process as soon as you know you will need one. The contract process can be lengthy. Obtaining multiple signatures can take a while, not to mention reviewing proposed changes to contracts, which will add to that time. Oops. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. Which will add to that time. Each contract should have at least 3 signatures. So the contractor's signature, the department signature, and the corporation's official signature. If your department requires more than these signatures, please plan accordingly, because we do have a few departments that require more than the 3 signatures. Can the contractor request contract language modifications? Yes, contractors can request changes to the agreement. However, all changes must be approved by the remaining signatures. So again, please plan accordingly. We have updated our service agreement. Please use the contract template with the revision date of March 25th, 2020. Outdated contract templates will not be accepted. You can find the contract templates on the new corporation contract webpage. Yay, and I know a lot of people have been wanting that, and so it's finally up. I will reveal the link at the end of my portion. On there, you can find the contract templates, guidelines, related contract documents, and more. Independent contractor changes effective January 1st, 2020. A major change to how we hire independent contractors took effect this year. Assembly Bill 5, or AB 5, became effective on January 1st, 2020. What this means is anytime a person is to be hired for services, the corporation must determine the person's status prior to engaging the person. Under AB 5, a worker is properly classified as an independent contractor when 3 certain conditions are met, known as the ABC test. The form named the Independent Contractor Questionnaire covers the ABC test. The Independent Contractor Questionnaire is to be completed by all potential independent contractors and submitted for review. If the independent contractor meets the three set criteria and passes the ABC test, then they can be hired as an independent contractor by using the independent contractor agreement. If they don't pass the test, then they must be hired as employees through HR. So that was the big one this year. And that form again is found on the contract webpage. Another question I get is, what is a fully executed agreement? This is when all parties have signed the contract, meaning the contractor, the department, and corporation official. Who reviews the independent contractor questionnaire? I do. And that's all on the website. Sorry, I wasn't clear on that. So I will review the questionnaire. Oh, right. So a fully executed agreement is when we have all the signatures, which is the contractor, the department's approving official signature, and the corporation official. Please note that the agreement is not legally binding until the corporation has signed the agreement. Corporation officials authorized to sign are the Executive Director, Kevin Saunders, and Associate Executive Director, Star Lee. Contractors will not be paid until we have a fully executed agreement and proper insurance documentation. Okay, so contract insurance requirements. Proof of insurance is always required. What is proof of insurance? Proof of insurance is the certificate of insurance, or COI, and the additional insured endorsement. These are 2 separate documents obtained from the contractor's insurance company. Why is it needed? The certificate of insurance verifies the existence of the insurance policy and provides the name of the contractor's insurance company, policy number, limits, etc. The additional insured endorsement extends the policy coverage to the auxiliary and is the financial backing to the indemnification clause in the contract in the case of negligent acts or omissions of the vendor or those acting on the vendor's behalf. So these are protection for the corporation and your department. They're very important. Waiving insurance requirements. If the department would like to request to waive the insurance requirements, the department must complete and submit the risk identification form and submit the hold harmless agreement signed by the contractor. Please note that submitting the request to waive the insurance requirement does not guarantee approval. The request may be denied or rejected. Another question I get is a PO needed for my contract? To confirm whether a PO is required for the type of service contracted, please refer to the payment matrix as Heather mentioned earlier. This document can be found on the corporation's website and is linked on the corporation's contract page as well. In my perfect world, a complete contract packet contains the contract template, the certificate of insurance, the endorsement, a VDR if the vendor is new, and a purchase requisition if needed according to the payment matrix. As I mentioned earlier, a contract webpage was recently created. The link is on the screen. You can find updated contract templates, processes, and related contract documents on there. The webpage is still a work in progress, so any comments and suggestions you may have are welcome. Please email them to me directly. I am maintaining that page. And that concludes my portion.
Okay, there was only one question, and I'm sure everybody already got the answer. It was, who reviews the independent contractor questionnaire for approval? And as Nancy responded, she does. So she reviews to determine whether the individual is an employee or an independent contractor. So,
So can I just further clarify? Because I just thought about this. So if you would like to hire someone as an independent contractor, then yes, I would review the form. But if you think that they may be an employee and not an independent contractor, then it would go to HR. Either way, if you send it to me and it needs to go to HR, I'll get it to them. But I just wanted to make sure that we know the difference.
okay, so I don't see any more questions on the chat. So let's.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and continue on discussing purchase orders. You're back with Heather again. So as far as purchase orders go, we want to remind folks that in order to create a purchase requisition, we need to have the vendor set up in CFS. So make sure that before you want to write a purchase requisition, you have contacted the vendor for the vendor data record and turned it into us. So that's a real important thing to remember. When my coworker Therese and I were discussing this slide, she came up with a great way to talk about this as far as the life cycle of a purchase requisition to a purchase order. Let's think of a purchase requisition as a caterpillar. So this purchase requisition is a caterpillar. It goes into its cocoon, which is, it gets submitted to Cindy Lynch with all the appropriate signatures and backup. It then comes out of the cocoon as a beautiful butterfly or a purchase order. So keep in mind, your caterpillar has one number, your purchase order butterfly has another number. So it's important that when we're discussing purchase orders, you're giving us your purchase order number and not your original purchase requisition number. So please just keep that in mind. That purchase order number is important to be noted on the invoice when it is submitted for payment. Also, as a reminder, when you're purchasing goods on a purchase order, those items must be received into CFS, the Common Financial System, by the receiving department. Now, sometimes goods will bypass this receiving department, and in that case, we will ask you to get in touch with Ben Sanchez in the receiving department in order to complete that receiving process. We are unable to pay an invoice unless it is fully received in CFS. So again, you may hear from us saying, hey, we can't pay the invoice, it's not received in CFS. At that point, we'll be asking you to contact Ben Sanchez in order to make that happen. We also want to remind folks a few things about procurement cards. Of course, procurement card deadlines are still in effect. So folks need to be making sure that they are submitting their ProCard reports and copies and scans of their receipts and backup documentation via email to Cindy Lynch or Cynthia Lynch. And we also want to remind folks that even though we are not collecting your original receipts and documentation, that we do want to ask the departments to hold on to that backup information for at least 90 days, just in case we need additional copies of any of those receipts. So again, make sure that you're emailing your procurement card reports once they've been fully approved by the authorized signer, and include all your backup documentation. And then again, once we get back to campus and things return to normal, people can go ahead and start submitting paper documents if they prefer, but scanned is always great. So we appreciate you taking the time to do that. So let's go ahead and open up to any additional questions.
So there's no questions. Let's go ahead and proceed with Martin.
Hello, this is Martin Medina, the Post Award Manager. One second while I get acclimated to the screen. All right. I'd like to share, I'm off slide. All right. I'd like to share with everyone our post-award year-end calendar, which lays out our schedule for closing out the fiscal year from a grants perspective. We've begun reviewing the open commitments on grants, as well as checking on whether POs have been set up for any pending subaward or subcontracts. This helps us in determining what expenses have been accrued to the grant if they're not received in time to be paid before this fiscal year ends. When we close the month of April next week, we will begin working on the schedule of expenditures of federal awards, or CFA, which will report expenses through April 30th. This document lists all our federally sponsored projects and their expenditures for the fiscal year, and will be provided to the auditors by the end of the month. They will use this information to select the grants to be tested for a preliminary audit in June. In June, I will send out an email asking programs to review their open commitments and to let us know of any POs that should be closed, as well as help with getting partners to submit invoices to be paid in the current fiscal year. We will rely on you to communicate with your partners to get these invoices in. We will follow up throughout the month requesting any estimates for invoices that won't be received in time to be paid in the current fiscal year. By June 7th, we should receive our list of auditor selections for testing. Last year, they made about 80 total selections. And when we do, I will notify those programs who have been selected. We ask that the PI or someone knowledgeable with the grant be available while the auditors are conducting the audit, which starts June 15th. This year will be a challenge with the audit likely happening virtually and relying on email communications back and forth to answer questions, which typically could have been resolved with a quick conversation in the office. Also on June 15th, we will begin the budget roll forward process, which should ensure your grant budgets are visible in Data Warehouse by mid-July. When we reach July, we will begin determining what items need to be accrued for the current fiscal year. This list will be fluid as we usually see a mad dash of invoices coming in to be processed. All invoices need to be in by July 13th, as we will be posting our accruals by July 15th. We should also be finalizing the budget roll forward process by then. At the end of July, the second CFA through June 30th will be provided to the auditors. They will select their second batch of expenditures for testing. Depending on how the testing for the first CFA goes, this second round is lighter from a post-award perspective. This audit tends to focus on the corporation, foundation, and Otter Student Union. We'll receive their items for testing around August 7th, and the audit begins August 17th. Same as the June audit, I will notify you if your grant has been selected or was selected for additional testing. Last year, we received several questions on what the auditors look for when they test expenditures, so I thought I'd provide an inside look into why we scrutinize the paperwork we received from you. The auditors will select several federally funded grants that are deemed major programs by using a dollar threshold criteria to categorize their grants as Type A or Type B programs. They will select grants from both pools to satisfy the audit requirement. Once selected, they will split the review between our payroll and non-payroll expenditures. Like I mentioned before, of the 80 selections made last year, they were evenly split between payroll and non-payroll. With our payroll expenditures, they look at 5 particular documents. The first being the Employee Status Form, or ESF. They review that the form was approved before payroll was posted to the grant. Another area they scrutinize is the position title area to ensure it matches what is in the approved budget. This is why we ask for the title to match the budget submitted by the Sponsor Programs Office. The auditors are verifying that the position matches the approved scope of work. They then review the time card to ensure time is entered correctly and approved by the appropriate person. They're also checking that our payroll system is being utilized, so it is important that ADP is used to process payroll instead of paper timesheets. They ask for the labor distribution report, which ensures allocations listed on the ESF have been distributed properly to grants listed on the ESF. This is an internal report run by our payroll department. Another internal document run by our payroll department is the pay statement to ensure the amount charged to the grant is what's actually paid to the employee. And finally, they review the effort certification form to confirm the effort worked on the projects. It is very important that you review and send the form back to us in a timely manner so we're not scrambling to get the form before or when the auditors are here. While one auditor is reviewing payroll expenditures, another is testing the non-payroll expenditures. The auditors want to see all supporting documentation for each expense selected, which can be any of the documents listed. They also look at the chart field request form to ensure expenditures are reviewed and approved by the appropriate signature authorities. They're also checking that one is actually on file, which is why the new award orientation meeting with the sponsor program office is sometimes delayed until we actually receive the form. They also want to see that we are utilizing sponsored funds in a timely manner, so they check to see the timeliness of payment. This is why we try our best to get documents in and turn them around for payment as soon as possible. For example, if we have a subaward with a partner that states we're to receive invoices monthly or on a quarterly basis, but we only receive one invoice at the end of the subaward, they'll question why. So it's important to be in contact with your partners to ensure they are performing the work as well as submitting their invoices regularly. If the auditor, in the auditor and sometimes sponsor view, if we're not spending the funds, then the work isn't getting done. If your grant has participants, they want to review the methodology in determining and selecting the participants. They verify that the grant guidelines are followed and that the participants meet the documented criteria. We'll ask for copies of the participant file that you will likely share directly with the auditor so as to maintain privacy and security. If your grant has cost share, they review the cost share verification worksheets to ensure they are approved on a semesterly basis. It is very important that we identify the cost share during the new award orientation or shortly after so it's logged in our database. I hope that provides some insight into why we appear to be overly thorough in some of our transactions and paperwork. We want to make sure that everything we hand over to the auditors tells the story of the expense and they come back with no questions or concerns. Finally, we are working on providing some tutorials and training on how to run, prepare, and read data warehouse reports. We'll show you how to run as of or between period reports, along with tips on how to manipulate the data for a report that best suits your needs. We should have these posted to the website soon. So if you have any questions, drop them in the chat and we'll get back to you. Thank you.
There's a few questions here, and they're good. There's a lot of questions. Hold on. The first question is, what is our staff on grant roles if the grant we are working on is going to be audited? I'll let Martin go ahead and.
What is our staff? So your role would just be to be available for any questions we have. Maybe there's something we missed when reviewing the documentation, or the auditor may ask a particular question of like, who was this person working on the grant? We'll just reach out to you to verify that we're telling them the same thing, that we're all on the same page.
Okay, the second question was, when the grant year is not July 1 to June 30, how does the accrual process work? It's the same. What we do is if we get an invoice that overlaps the fiscal year, we tend to prorate it based on the number of days covered in the invoice. So it's not any different than your regular accrual process. We just apply it through June 30. So everybody is subject to the June 30 deadline. So the ending of the award doesn't really, it's not as critical at that point as the actual fiscal year. Will this presentation be available for reference after the meeting? Yes, it is my understanding that it will be posted. Plus, we're also recording it. Any more questions on chat? Okay, then I'll proceed with the next section. My name is Monica Rodriguez, and I've been the chat answerer here and there. I'm going to present the end of your calendar. Forgot to mention, if some of you don't know who I am, I'm the accounting manager for the corporation. I've been with the corporation or the university for over 25 years. This is probably my 26th year, I think. And yeah, this COVID situation has been different. So let me go ahead and proceed with the end of your calendar. Some of the important dates on here are June 12th. June 12th, because we would like that everybody Submit as many of your check requests as possible on this date. I mean, there's extra review involved, especially if it's grant related. If it's donation related, there's also review there. So the earlier you can get us your check requests, the better. Now, it doesn't mean that June 12th is a dead date, a drop dead date, but we would appreciate if you could send in as much as possible. June 12th is also the last day to submit your purchase requisitions for 2019-20. And as I mentioned earlier, we do have extra reviews to do, specifically to allowability and availability. So if you can get in as many purchase requisitions as you can, that would also be appreciated. June 19th, we have changed. This is actually a new date that we've included in here. All transfers and corrections are due in accounting for the previous 90 days. If they exceed 90 days, you need to contact accounting. So we have a delegated account, email account for corporation accounting at csumb.edu that you can mail all your transfers and corrections. And a couple of us will be monitoring it and parsing them out to the relevant person. Let's see, another important date is June 22nd. That'll be the last accounts payable check run for the fiscal year. So that's part of the reason why we would like to have as many documents earlier in June as possible. If we do have an emergency, then we'll try to run another one, but for the most part, we're trying to stick to June 22nd. June 24th. So this is very critical when it comes to chargebacks because we're on the university's timeline. So we need to make sure that we meet their deadline for chargebacks. Otherwise, you may not get reimbursed, or meaning you may not get your fund reimbursed on the corporation side. If something does come up after this date, please notify us immediately. But if you can send any chargebacks or invoice information to me or Lorena Villalobos, that would be great. And then there's the June 26th deadline. That is the last day to submit your deposits to the university cashier. Please refer to their window times also. But according to their end of year schedule, Friday, the 26th is the last day. A few more deadlines. The June 30th remote capture deposit reference is in there because we're assuming we're not going to be in shelter in place at that time, but if we are, we'll have to change that up and we'll get back to you on that. July's important dates. We have July 2nd as the last day for time card approvals and ADP. So for any work prior to this pay period, please send or scan your approved time cards to David Stenerson. So he is our payroll technician and he needs to be aware of anything prior to June 30th. And yeah, so the next date is July 6th that we think is critical. So any auxiliary invoices that need to go outside of campus need to be sent to Scott Machado. So Scott is our accounts receivable accountant. He records all the auxiliary invoices that go off campus. So if you know of anything that needs to be charged to someone externally, please keep in contact with him. You see, July 8th is another critical day. We're going to have our first regular AP check run of the fiscal year. So, and the only reason why it's later than the university is because we have the allowability process and availability process. So we need an extra few days to check all the documents before we can actually post them. And July 8th is also the last day for us to voucher in the accounts payable system automatically. So anything that we get prior to that, we just automatically voucher. Anything after that date, we have to put on a journal entry template. So we don't ask you to do the journal entry template like the university does, but we do ask you to inform us of the different invoices that you receive after this date. Let's see. On July 10th, we need to review your packets for allowability and availability. So the ProCard reconciliation packets are due on July 10th for the regular cycle and the special cycle. So we run a special cycle every year, and that encompasses the last days of the month of June. We ask that you go into CFS and reconcile those. And part of it is because we have restricted funds such as grants and donations, and we have to make sure that they're allowable costs. Otherwise, we have to disallow them before we close the books. The last one is the 13th, and that is the date of the manual accrual. So as I mentioned earlier, we voucher everything through July 8th. Anything after that date, we consider a manual accrual, and we'll put it on a journal entry template for you. So just send us a copy of the invoice for any services or supplies that were received prior to June 30, and we will book them. And that's about it. We've also added a contacts list in case anyone needs to contact us via email. Our emails are on there, a small description of who's responsible for what is there. So if you need anything, please contact the appropriate person. And if there are no more questions, we'd like to thank you for joining us today. But if something does come up later, please don't hesitate to contact us by email, and we'll try to respond as soon as possible. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you.
As a reminder, we will be posting the PowerPoint and a Zoom recording of this Business Operations Forum presentation. Again, thank you all for joining us. We really do appreciate it. And if anybody else would like to say anything, feel free. All right, let me go ahead and do one thing. I will show everybody the going to change my screen sharing option here to allow to show the Business Under Shelter at Home webpage. I'm hoping it's visible at this point. So I did want to point out that we do have the University Corporation Business Under Shelter at Home page. You can find that by looking at the forms page under the University Corporation heading. And again, this is where we have a lot of good information for you, and we'll be posting our tutorials on using Adobe Acrobat. We also have a link to the Corporation Defensive Driving Program as well. It's not something we touched on too much, but it is important for folks to know about. And that has been a new addition this year. So again, thanks everybody, and we appreciate the time.